Hello, my renegades. Welcome back. My name is Sarah Jane, and today for Down the Rabbit Hole, we will be talking about HR 4079, or HR 645. It also has another name, Executive Order 11490, which was the only type of evidence that I could get online about this. But in other words, it's all about FEMA and FEMA camps, fusion centers, stuff like that. So we are going to be talking about the modern day concentration camp plan that Nixon, Jimmy Carter, and Reagan have all kind of signed for. And we'll get into that later. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to click the links down in the description below on the audio, the video, all of that lovely stuff. We have merch. Please buy yourself something nice. You can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, or my email at rogue.radio04@gmail.com to talk to me, whatever. Alright, here we go. Hello, my renegades. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and computer, and when hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download your Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's a lot of fun, so come join us. So, before we get into this, I just want to say that I didn't find anything on HR 4079 on the internet. I think William's evidence in his book is outdated just because I couldn't find anything on the internet about it. And I'm not saying that what his sources weren't true or not useful. I'm pretty sure it is still. They probably destroyed the evidence of this. So the only thing that I could really find was like about cross-pollination in flowers, like the laws for that. And music copyright for HR 645, which is from that reference is from Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory episode on FEMA camps, which I have also watched while I was doing all of this. The only thing that I could really find that was actual evidence that I found useful on the internet was Executive Order 11490, which is something that Nixon signed back in the day about FEMA, coming in and becoming the new government. And if you really want to read through the whole thing, because it is so long, I didn't even get through half of it, because it has a lot of fancy wording, and if you really want to take it apart and figure out that for yourself, go ahead and do it. I just know that the article had Nixon's picture on it. That's all I know. So the one that I read had Nixon's picture on it. But anyway, HR 4079 is a national takeover of the U.S. So FEMA, or Federal Emergency Management Agency, will be the new government, and everyone within the United States will be taken into detention centers for FEMA camps. FEMA would replace the government and arrest law-abiding citizens who are a domestic threat to society or domestic terrorists. How many times have we been hearing that, though? Domestic terrorism, domestic terrorist. Joe Biden even had a really creepy speech about how patriots need to be, silenced and called domestic terrorists and stuff like that. It's happening. Basically, FEMA camps would be modern day concentration camps for us. For people who will express something as little as our First Amendment. They will put you on FEMA's hit list, and we'll get into that later on how and why and how they actually do that. A former member of FEMA has stated that the Federal Emergency Management Agency is and will be a secret government that can be implicated into plan by any moment by our current government's choice. Any disaster emergency, such as oil spills, hurricanes, etc. If the president decides to declare national emergency, FEMA will be there to pounce and operate the country as they see fit. Even with this deadly chemical spill in East Palestine, Ohio, could have triggered a national emergency, but for some reason FEMA hasn't stepped in to help at all because of Biden not declaring it an emergency, and since it isn't a traditional disaster. All right. I know FEMA isn't stepping in to help the people of East Palestine, and I know that sounds awful, and trust me, I'm glad that some people are coming forth to help, such as Donald Trump. Count yourself lucky that this chemical spill isn't a national emergency, because if it was, we would be put into concentration camps and be separated from our loved ones. So I'm not going to sit here and say that what East Palestine is going through isn't important. It definitely is. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, they're lucky because they're not being helped. I am saying that I don't trust FEMA. The business that I work for right now was funded by FEMA during COVID. And I read every single contract that they wanted me to sign. Hopefully I didn't sign my soul over to them, because I even had some other people look at it before I even decided to sign anything. So I think I'm good. But if your business or if your work has decided to be funded by FEMA during a national disaster, I would be very careful, because they're going to want you to sign stuff, and I just would suggest that you read everything that they want you to sign. But anyway, that is how FEMA wants it. Anything, even the Middle East war that we had, would have been a good excuse for any of our presidents to declare an emergency. Whatever the president decides is a national emergency, he can do it even if it is a small and unnecessary type of emergency. The Executive Order 11051, so 11051, has listed every conceivable emergency except real war and nuclear attack upon the country. Odd. So with this particular article, we're going to go further down towards the Geneva Convention, which does talk about nuclear war and regular war and stuff like that being a national emergency, but this executive order specifically does not include any type of national emergency such as war or nuclear attack. But the mobilization of FEMA was even tested with Rex 84A to test the readiness of American citizens in a national emergency. Within the executive order document, there is a list of orders that will be put into action when FEMA comes into power, such as the takeover of communications media such as phones, computers, and anything used to communicate with one another. So all of that will be taken away. It will be monitored, and if you want to call somebody's going to be listening on the other end. Takeover of all electric power, petroleum, gas, fuels, and minerals. You want to know why people who have, invented alternate fuel engines get killed mysteriously? This is why, because they won't be able to control those people who have maybe water-powered engines or algae-powered engines, because they don't fall under the FEMA control. They want people and anything that doesn't fall into this category of FEMA rule, yeah, they're going to silence people. There's people out there that actually make their own Wi-Fi. There's actual people who live in their own, like, homes, like mobile homes. They make their own, like, car homes or van homes, and they're able to create their own Wi-Fi routers, and they don't have to pay anything. It's incredible. Anyway, takeover of all modes of transportation, highways, and seaports. That means that anything that is imported by seaports or exported by seaports will be monitored and be distributed how they would like it. Also, they don't want anybody escaping the U.S. during this time either. So, mobilization of civilians into work brigades or camps under the government's supervision. You like your job? Too bad. Anyway, takeover of all health, education, and welfare functions. Designated Postmaster General to operate national registration of all persons. That means that everyone will have to report to the post office in order to get a new registration, new license, new identification number, new social security number, and everything. That way they can keep track of you better. Takeover of airports and aircraft, so no traveling. Provides for housing and finance authority to relocate communities and designate areas to be abandoned and establish new locations for populations. So, I actually had a dream about this certain part of the order. So I had a dream about something like this. There was a new government and no one was allowed to live in abandoned places. That means you can't, like, if you're home, if you are returning to your old home and it's abandoned because it's not in a designated area, you can't go back to your old home. You can't go back there. You will be arrested and put to death, sort of thing. Like, that was what was going on in my dream. And it was because everyone needed to be accounted for. I never knew that this was an actual executive order until I started reading this chapter. So yes, I will say I'm not prophetic. I don't know if I am. Even if I was, I wouldn't say anything. But I do sometimes have dreams that come true. So that happens. Takeover of railroads, inland waterways, and storage facilities. The executive order was made under the presidency of Nixon. All of them were combined into an Executive Order 11490, signed by Jimmy Carter in 1979. All federal agencies will come under FEMA once the okay is given. Thanks to President Bush for approving this as well in 1988. The Constitution will be suspended during this time, so all of our rights will be taken away. Think of Nazi Germany. That is exactly how it is going to happen. They even have chemicals to make us more docile to coming with them, but that is later on. We as a people have the right to go to our congressman's office and ask any type of documentation that we need to learn from. And the reason why they have there's a reason why they keep doing this under our noses is because we've just been distracted for so long. They think that they can get away with anything. But if you go to your congressman's office and ask for HR 4079, I would ask for Executive Order 11051 or 11490, except, like, besides HR 4079, just because the internet didn't provide it. If you have, you have the right to have a copy of it. If they say no, find it on the internet, print it out, and send it to people because the Constitution is in danger. I looked up Nixon's 11490, and I have found out that they have had FEMA in their back pocket. They've had this in their back pocket for 20 years. They've been planning this for a very long time. Sorry, I thought I stopped it for a second. It just kept going. It just kept going. Okay. The Department of Defense will be a big part of FEMA and big part of FEMA camps and making sure everything is in order for it to stay in power. So you could say that the reason why the Department of Defense is not well equipped for a nuclear war is because they want it to happen. Yeah. I mean, if you are a regular listener, you will know that I've covered the Department of Defense and how ill-equipped it is for nuclear war. Maybe it's because they wanted it to happen. They want this to happen. They want World War III to happen in order for FEMA to go ahead and take control. The document William Cooper found had described the new states of America in that document. We didn't have a Bill of Rights. We had no rights to bear arms, and that sounds familiar. A lot of Democrats want gun control. We had no rights at all. The Rockefellers have even funded this to come into action, no surprise. They always believed in controlling the masses for a higher cause. Those Rockefellers, the Bushes, the Royals, all of them. Anyway, federal agencies and military agencies will fall under this order, including the LEAA, Law Enforcement Assistant Administration, and the HEW, Health and Education Welfare. Not just these two agencies would be involved, but even guerrilla terrorist groups have been funded by the government as an excuse to make this happen. Wow. We have unknowingly funded this order with our own tax dollars. No wonder inflation is at an all-time high right now. They want more money from us in order to afford all of this to happen soon. You know. I'm sure even the national debt is so bad because the national government, or because the government has decided to fund things like this. And this is to control us. So, the U.S. Postal Service would become a national registry to register everyone in America and make sure that no one can escape the country during this time either. What are they so afraid of? They would be in control of food services, mental health services as well, along with censorship. That new YouTube algorithm helping at all, yo? They will also bring in a new police force, a national police force. They will take over your bank account, anything worth money, and they will take it all for the sake of FEMA to use it. They will take any medicine in your home to stockpile it for the masses in the prisons who will be under slave labor. If you want to withdraw or deposit anything, you will have to go through the federal bank, and they will oversee your actions and approve or deny you for any reason. If you own private property, they have the right to confiscate it for the use of the government. They will rewrite the educational system and mental health facilities. We have already seen this happen in schools. They've already done this. They've already done stuff like this. Critical race theory, gender affirming care, gender studies and sexuality studies in schools and grades as early as the second grade. Government has already been burning down food factories, taking over crops, and making the farmers destroy their crops for money. Love your job? Well, FEMA don't care. They will choose your job for you. Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, will relocate you into a suitable home where they can watch your every move. I know what you're thinking. How can the government be able to round up everyone in such camps? Why would the government do something like this? Because we've let them. We've let them, people. We've been so distracted. We've let them. The HEW Department of Defense, the National Guard, and other military organizations will be enforced to divide up the people and send them to the closest facility to be registered and homed. They won't care about your voice and what you have to say in the matter. To them, the government knows best, and you are the poor, fat, and stupid subject they have to take care of. We are cattle to them, and that is all, and we will be used for their own gain. Think of it like the Hebrews being enslaved by Egypt. How many Hebrews were abused, killed, and mistreated by the elite back then? Or what about the Nazi Party? How many Jews had to die for Hitler to make his Aryan race possible? He actually never did it. He died before he actually saw that happen, but Hitler believed that the Jewish people were diseased and criminals. That is how we will be seen by the government once FEMA takes over. We're probably actually seen by the government like that now. We will not be seen as individuals, we will be seen as cattle, just the means for the elite to use until we die. To be honest, that's partially our fault. We choose to stay distracted by all the apps they have made for us, the games, movies, and media we cannot get enough of, and all the while we are being distracted. By one hand doing something, the other hand is slipping those documents right past us. They have done it to us for so long, so why would they need permission, right? This is basically martial law, and under martial law, citizens have no rights. I can guarantee you that the government will milk this for as long as they can. Anyone in the military that has been part of Operation Cable Slicer or Operation Garden Pot, you have actually helped this happen as well. So, those in the military operations that entail that the military can take control of the state government and local governments. It's disguised as the rules for civil disturbances, such as preventing people from gathering in the streets, neutralizing the revolution's leadership, dispersal of crowds and demonstrators. How many times have we seen protests get out of hand and the police were right there to make sure that it got controlled? We all have the right to protest. Of course, this is within the rule of doing it peacefully. Some civilians have been filed as dangerous just by being under the party of Ron Paul. Republicans, conservatives, and patriots alike are what FEMA are looking for. This isn't a real national emergency. This is a protection from people like you and me who have an unpopular opinion, who choose to think differently than the woke folk of America right now. If you were ever labeled a domestic terrorist, they want you. If you call yourself a patriot, conservative, Republican, they want you. This is a domestic dispute between the patriots who have sense and the woke folk who don't. I know that sounds far-fetched, but the documents that William Cooper left in his book are outdated, but like I said, there's still a lot of truth to it. I have to try to connect the wires that he didn't. I'm sure if he were here today, he would agree with my deduction that the domestic dispute is between liberals and conservatives, conspiracy theorists and sheep, non-religious and the religious. The one part in this chapter that I have to talk about is their use of mental institutions when FEMA is in action. So this is something that I have a passion for, is mental health. I love mental health, but they even have a plan for the mentally ill and all of that. There is a base somewhere in Alaska. There's a psych ward. There's a psych ward up in Alaska that will house a lot of these people. And It's terrible. Anyone under mental health care will be relocated into psychiatric facilities under the whether severe or not, including the people above I have described. If you become an intellectual threat, you get put away with all the criminally insane and mentally ill. That is dangerous, to say the least, because there are different degrees of mental illness. There are different degrees of mental tolls on the mind. Putting them with people who are criminally insane, who are really struggling severely with mental illness, is dangerous. But they will also use anectine. So anectine is very, very disturbing. I hated researching this, but it is a drug that makes the body paralyzed. They will use shock therapy to the extreme. So if you guys ever saw Suicide Squad, where Joker puts the electrodes like at Harley Quinn's temples, that's an actual thing. That's a thing. And he did it without paralyzing her first, which in reality, if that actually happened and those characters were real, she probably would have had a lot of broken bones because of the muscle contractions being so forceful. So yes, I learned a lot during this, but that type of electrotherapy exists, yes. It is so powerful that it can cause broken bones and grazes to the body due to muscle contractions, and with anectine, it stops you breathing, locks up your body, and somehow makes you feel like you're dying, but you're still alive. It is not painless. It's not painless. You feel everything, I think, as far as I know. I did say it is painless, but you are awake for the whole thing. Think about it. Do you want people to control your body that much to where they can make the voltage as high as they want to teach you a lesson? That's their form of punishment. If you're out of line in a psych ward during this time, and I'm saying like patriots will be labeled mentally ill and they will be put in psych wards. That's what they're trying to do. They're going to lock up your body. They're going to inject this in your body to where you're locked up. You can't do anything about it. You're awake. You can't breathe. You feel like you're dying. And then all of a sudden, they put the electrodes to your head and yeah. The drug makes you resilient enough to not to struggle during the electroshock and therapy sessions. And it doesn't cause any serious damage to the skull. But if anectine wasn't like injected, you would have felt everything. You would have had some broken bones from all of that. So, but it's still very inhumane to me because they can put the voltage as high as they want and you can still survive it. But you get to see everything. You get to feel everything and you have no control of your body, and your will to live is nothing to them. They want you to do this to people, or they want to do this to people who choose to challenge the system. Wow. This whole thing is called psychopolitics, where it is the art and science of asserting and maintaining dominion over the thoughts and loyalties of individuals, masses, and groups. So, with that, it is apart from the anectine thing, but it is part of the thing that they want to do in order to make sure that, you know, people are in line intellectually when it comes to... They want to keep people poor, fat, and stupid, sort of thing. BZ is also a chemical that will be used in rounding up citizens. It is a nerve gas that causes sleepiness, dizziness, and incapacity to move. about, and the military has this in aerosol form, injection, and bomb form. They have admitted that this is specifically for a civilian control. 600 in count of these mental institutions are in the United States. So there are 600 mental institutions that will round you up, inject you with anactine, and punish you with electrodes if you are out of line, just because you speak. Habeas corpus will also be suspended, which the Geneva Convention in 1947 has said that they would never suspend that. But so all of us who are innocent won't be able to seek trial either. So they will have the power to exercise the death penalty if you express your First Amendment rights. This came from the book. So it says the U.S. reserves the right to impose the death penalty in accordance to the provisions of Article LXVIII, without regard to whether the offense referred to therein are punishable by death under law of the occupied territory at the time the occupation begins. Geneva Convention 1949, Article LXVIII. So, I said it was 1947, it was 1949. But they will basically arrest and imprison us just because we upset the status quo. The thought police, you know. FEMA camps will run your name through their database if you have exercised your right to protest. So let's say right now, if you have ever organized a protest, a peaceful protest, if you helped Ron Paul in his campaign at all, if you have even, I don't know, as small as having a podcast talking about this shit, or even just thinking differently than other people, just thinking, they're going to punish you for thinking. If you are a Republican, a patriot, someone who wants to rise up again against the status quo of how the flow is right now, your name is probably in the database for fusion centers. So whenever they end up, whenever FEMA ends up becoming in power, they're coming after you. They know your address, they know your accounts, they know your bank account, they know your name, they know where you live. They're going to come after you. So, any possibility of anyone becoming violent is license for you to be arrested. There are several planted in the United States right now, and there are prisoners inside, and they're practicing. So what I'm trying to say is that the fusion centers, residential centers, and FEMA camps are already put into, they're already in power, like they're already operating. I want to say that the people inside are the people that have been, how do I say this? After 9/11, there was a number. There was a commercial for a number that you could call for anyone to call and say, well, this person is, a suspicious person. That actually goes to the FEMA camps and the fusion centers. They watch, and if you step out of line, then they have the authority to take you and arrest you and put you in these fusion centers. There's people out there right now in fusion centers and residential centers that are living there. They live there. Residential centers specifically from, Jesse Ventura's show. He actually said that residential centers are mainly for whole families. So whole families get in prison together, and they actually came up to one of the places, and it's double fenced, and the barbed wire or the razor wire is pointing inwards, so they don't want anybody coming out. They're not worried about someone coming in, they're worried about someone coming out. Sorry. And you do remember when I talked about MKUltra and how biochemical terrorism was a thing, and it's one of their favorite things that the government likes to just pull out. It's one of their favorite moves. They have been practicing this for years with biochemical terrorism. COVID-19 could very well be the practice run for what is to come. I'm not sorry that I said that. Same thing with East Palestine and all these derailments with chemical spills, chemical fires, and everything like that. They're practicing. They're practicing. We're all the lab rats. They're practicing. They call these camps residential centers, fusion centers, and even FEMA camps, and they are located near train tracks. They're mostly located near train tracks. That way they can haul off as many people as they can during the night. So they even say, like, they'll do this in the cover of night during Thanksgiving or Christmas. I don't know if they're going to do that. To be honest, the government has been bold enough to bring about COVID-19, and it happened, like, out of nowhere. It didn't happen by the cover of night. It happened out of nowhere. So they can strike anytime they want. I can't believe I whizzed through that packet. That was 14 pages of a lot of information, so I apologize if you have to, like, replay it just to process it, because that was a lot. That was a lot. But patriots, conservatives, forward thinkers, all right, conspiracy theorists, very, very prophetic people, all right, who love Jesus. We're all targets. We're all targets, including me. I'm pretty sure they have my name down about 5 times on that list, maybe. I don't know. I don't like to think that I make that much of a dent or that much of a threat to the government, but I don't know. Maybe. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. I will see you in the trenches next time. Don't be afraid of this. Think critically. Don't be at home during the holidays. If that's true, don't be home during the holidays. Try your best to unplug. After doing all of my research, I'm reading more. Like, that whole chapter probably might have just saved my life, because I don't want to be online that much anymore, because it's like they know where I'm at. They know what I'm doing, sort of thing. And I don't like that. I mean, I always knew that if you have a screen, therefore you're already being programmed, and that's true. I'm just saying, I'm gonna read more, y'all. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna finish that book, and I'm just gonna go ahead and find a new one. And, you know, we are destroyed by our lack of knowledge. That's what the Bible says. So I'm going to do everything I can to be knowledgeable of these things. And I would suggest that you guys do it too. But anyway, yes, thank you so much for listening. See you guys. Bye-bye.